Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here, your host of UnWoke Academy. Welcome to another episode. Countdown timer. Let's begin with that. We're at 7 days, 13 hours, 46 minutes, and 28 seconds until I officially declare freedom from the boot heel of weaponized regulators. That's the day, 4th of July, 2024, that we set for ourselves to get out from under. We have been in 26 months of examination. I've got to air quote that, from weaponized regulators. It all started because yours truly, I started fighting back against the woke left many years ago in the realm of public education. I think that was the first place that I kind of stuck my head up and was like, whoa, wait a minute, time out here, people. There's bad stuff happening in K through 12 education, and we need to take a look at this stuff. And so I helped co-found something called the Academic Accountability Project in the state of Ohio, where, interestingly enough, all of the performance records that are reported from public schools to the State Department of Education, they're kind of hard to find, but when you do find them, there are a few steps. You can turn it into a report, and then you can present that report and talk to school boards about the lack of academic proficiency. And in my state, where I happen to actually care, Ohio has fallen from what used to be a top 10 destination for education to 38th, in the nation for education, all while Ohio has a few times systematically sort of softened the academic proficiency standards. So that's no good. Clearly, it's a sign of woke in invading our school district. So I stuck my head up and started fighting back and arguing against this stuff. And then we saw critical race theory entering, and a whole bunch of us, a big lineup of great, wonderful parents and community members in a former school district where my wife happened to run for school district. We argued back that that stuff doesn't belong in schools, but education does. Interestingly, in taking on that fight and then later fighting against masking and the proposed mandatory injections of experimental substances into children under the auspices of a vaccination. There were many of us that didn't like that stuff, and we were questioning it, especially the vaccinations, quote unquote, because the definition of vaccine had changed that year, 2021, and the test results from any sort of fallout or unintended consequences of those jabs was really unknown at the time. But so interestingly enough, mainstream media came in, they mic'd me up, followed me around for a day, and talked about me and the things that I was doing to fight back against the woke in schools. And then another media group came in and was talking about the state of education. And then actually there was a third. It's actually, so Newsmax did a special. It was a spotlight special on transforming America that focused on the state of education. And they saw fit to include a whole bunch of my comments. It was very flattering. I actually didn't know until I was given an advanced preview and just surprised to discover myself in that. So anyway, as a byproduct of that and fighting back against the woke left, I got on the radar of some people that don't like people like me to stand up and advocate and speak and learn and try to inform the public. So for 26 months, I have been the subject of examination from regulators that oversee me. As a note, because it's important to me to point this out, there is zero suspicion of wrongdoing. I'm not accused of doing anything inappropriate or wrong. Nobody in my company, any of my companies are. There are no complaints. Everything's squeaky clean. And so far, those regulators have wave after wave after wave, which I'm certain is meant to exhaust me emotionally, psychologically, physically, financially, legally, whatever, all of the above. It's meant to do that to me. It is pretty brutal. I wouldn't suggest it for anybody. It's like being in a over 2-year IRS audit. Although I suspect that's probably next if I can clear my way out of this mess. The same thing is done to a lot of conservatives. It's weaponized regulators. So anyway, on the 4th of July, I've just decided I've had enough. I cannot continue to be overseen by Wall Street while also fighting back against woke Wall Street. So I'm declaring my independence and autonomy. I sort of did that years ago, or I thought I'd done that when I started my own company over 10 years ago. I left Wall Street a long time ago and formed my own company and thought, good, I'm out from under and I'll have all the conflicts of interest and all the murky bad stuff that I used to hate and I got in big trouble for, including 2009, when I get this. In 2009, I actually wrote a letter from within a Wall Street firm. There was a big multi-page. I wrote up this whole thing. I don't even remember what I said, but it was a scathing letter admonishing their behavior because they were taking pension money, retirement funds, and funneling them into BlackRock. And I didn't approve of that. I thought it was inappropriate and probably malfeasance and all kinds of bad stuff. But the fallout was immediate and severe. I got called into the principal's office, sort of air quoting that. It wasn't really the principal's office, but it kind of felt like it from school. When you get in trouble, I got called into an office and there were legal threats and all kinds of stuff. And that marked the beginning of the end for me. So I eventually went through all the hoops and hurdles to establish my own company and thought that I was free of those entanglements. However, I've discovered, since everything skewed to the left and went woke, that's not entirely true, because regulators lean left heavily, strongly, probably thoroughly left. And I can't continue to fight the left and be regulated by the left. So on 4th of July, I'm going to declare my independence and autonomy and be unregulated. That's a must. So a couple of notes. We actually plan to host Drew Lehman and Matt Benito from Inspire Advisors. We've inked a deal with them because since I will be and have been closing and insulating the work that I do and not accepting new clients, they are not affiliated in any way, which is good on both sides. They can keep arm's length from the loud and sort of whistleblowing work that I do, but that gives me an outlet to encourage people to go to. Look up, and I'll include in the show notes a link to Drew Lehman and Matt Benito. They have a special web page, his phone number, etc. Check them out. They do this thing called an impact report. You're going to love that. And they're offering it for free for followers and listeners of UnWoke.academy. So check them out. I hope you like them. Also, Rob Netzley, who is the CEO of Inspire, he is slated. We don't have a date set yet, but I'm hoping to get him on this program because I think he's got a really good head on his shoulders, and I think you're going to love what they do. But without further ado, wait, one more thing. I want to give a tip of the hat to our wonderful friends and distribution partners over at OBBM Network. They're found on Roku. There's an app, OBBM Network TV, and you can live stream and go to any browser and find OBBM Network News. They're getting channels opening up all over the country, and they're doing all kinds of great stuff to bring real, actual, timely, important things like this broadcast to we, the people of the United States. Pardon me. So I get all choked up when I think about OBBM Network. Also, our friends over at blessednewstv.com website, check them out. They have a great platform, very pro-patriot, very user-friendly, and awesome to use. So thanks to both. I would like to delve into Amazon. So yes, that company that you can click online or talk into your phone and stuff appears. But is it a good thing? Let's think for a moment about Amazon as a company. And I want to start by encouraging you to think back to 1984. It's kind of a significant year. Even if you weren't born in 1984, you probably should have heard, at least should have heard of the George Orwell book, 1984. Read it, watch the movie, something. At least get your head around the significance of that date. But in addition to that very dubious and timely book written by George Orwell called 1984, in the year 1984, a very significant thing happened in the United States. Something called AT&T, or what people used to call Ma Bell, was broken up. It was a monopoly. It had gained so much power and control over communications in the United States that our government understandably saw a lack of competition and drove it into many different pieces, which allowed then for competition to come in. Now, considering that, let's think about Amazon. What is the likelihood that one company can come along? I made some notes here so that I hopefully don't miss any part of this, but what is the likelihood that one company can come along and create a voice prompt whole home system that connects to video surveillance of your house, can take over major portions of publishing, turns into also providing cloud computing, then adds something called Amazon Web Services. And if you remember a few years ago, 4 years ago, during the last presidential election cycle, there was a major upset happening in social media. There was a social media platform called Parler that was a serious and legitimate growing threat to Facebook. And suddenly they were turned off. It was actually Amazon Web Services that was providing internet activity, internet sort of flow through, that decided sort of arbitrarily, from everything I can see, that they just didn't like Parler and just turned them off overnight. That same company does technology, hardware integration. They are a major chunk of U.S. supply chain, shipping and logistics, consumer goods. They own Whole Foods. They now have music distribution, in addition to publishing. They're consumer electronics, as I mentioned, and I'm not exactly sure what the relationship with MGM Studios is, but they own some or all of MGM Studios and Whole Foods. So, considering that list, you think about what is important for the United States to thrive and survive as a population. And you have internet traffic, publishing, which is what you can read and when and where and who controls what gets published and who has access to it, cloud computing, supply chain, shipping, logistics, food, even music, consumer electronics, and video production of things like movies, MGM Studios, for heaven's sakes, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. The point that I'm making here, and I've been making this for a while, and I don't think that people are seeing this whole massive, explosive, expansive growth and the tentacle spread of Amazon the way that I am. And I want to ring the alarm bell. I'm definitely doing that. This is not a mild, hey, we should look at this. I think that in my book, I can't definitively point to a person or a group of people, but here's what I think. Seeing the massive spread of that in a very short period of time, I strongly suspect, oh, let me add one piece. There's a really important piece to the whole Amazon thing and what it is and what it represents. It is clearly closely aligned with Washington, D.C. politics. And let me put a little finer point on that. So Amazon is referred to as one of the big five tech companies. Included in that is also alphabet companies, which is Google, Apple, everybody knows Apple, Meta, which is Facebook, and Microsoft. We know pretty clearly, and frustratingly, there's a horrible Supreme Court ruling that just came down that sort of gives a seal of approval on Washington, D.C. influencing what can and can't be said on social media. We saw it happen clearly in 2020. And I think the people of the United States in particular and the world have been waiting for the blowback from that. I think that some people should be thrown in jail. We have First Amendment rights here, and it's up to we, the people, to assert them. That means pitching a fit right now, because in my book, I started asking early this morning, actually, when the news came out. This is a side note, but it's related. Um, how do we, the people, file suit against the Supreme Court? That's my question. For political activism. That's clearly, in my book, what that ruling is. It's political activism, because our Supreme Court in the United States just said it's okay if Washington, D.C. wants to influence politics and what can and cannot be talked about. And the supreme example that everyone, and it's not the only one, we have massive examples across the board of all kinds of manipulation and control of information and who is allowed to know and when. But the issue of Hunter Biden's laptop, that's sort of it's a catalyst event, and it woke a lot of people up. There were 51 people in trusted positions of authority in and around politics and law enforcement who all signed a letter saying that the information about Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. Well, it turns out that they were lying, and that's not true, or they were extremely misled and off the mark, in which case they're unfit for duty, and signed this letter. In my book, that's one thing, and it's bad enough. But Washington, D.C., to be able to take the auspices under the cover of law and assert themselves and dictate to social media what can and cannot be talked about, that's unbelievably dangerous. And that is Banana Republic stuff. That's third world Banana Republic stuff. So anyway, that also connects to Amazon, because Amazon, in its role in providing all these services and controlling what gets published and what people can talk about, what information can be presented. For heaven's sakes, they are the company, Amazon Web Services, they're the company that shut down Parler, because Parler, if you remember, in 2020 was the social media platform that people were migrating to massively. And they were talking a lot about things like Hunter Biden's laptop. If one company that controls all those things can suddenly overnight, at the drop of a dime, just shut off, not hey, we're closing Parler and you're going to have to go to a different social media site in 60 days or something. It was overnight. They turned it off. And there were, I don't even know how many millions of people. The same thing we saw happen, and we're still continuing to see happen. And it's mystifying to those of us who enjoy our freedoms. But we're seeing it happen with the other companies. Microsoft, the founder, owner, CEO, whatever, chairman, whatever he is now, Bill Gates, is out there with zero medical background that anybody seems to be able to find, is advocating for people to join these medical experiments and get jabs, but only certain people, not people who are crossing borders illegally. Them, for some reason, they get a free pass and they don't have to join this medical experimentation. But Bill Gates is advocating for that stuff. Meta, which is Facebook, is censoring the heck out of everything and everybody. Google, which is Alphabet company. Google, there have been people, including, so I'm not going to remember his name, some pretty far left liberal lawyer who follows these things. He went before Congress and said, look, I am pretty far left. I'm voting for Clinton. At the time, he was voting for Clinton, etc. But he said, I'm really alarmed at what I see. He blew the whistle on Google skewing people and information. So when people look up and want to learn things about Joe Biden or Donald Trump, the information that flows and the information that people are permitted to get access to is controlled by those companies. And if those companies are super closely aligned with or in bed with or are, for heaven's sakes, part of Washington, D.C., that's a major problem. We no longer have a republic if that's the case. So as we talk about, and it comes up all the time, people are like, well, just I have published a book. You can get it on Amazon. Or I'm going to order stuff. I'm ordering dishwashing soap, and I'm going to get it delivered from Amazon. And they have these shipping hubs that look like major cities and fortresses built growing up all over the place. That's a major concern. So I believe the answer is a couple-fold. First thing is go to your ATM machine and pull out cash. Find a small business and go spend money there. Buy your dish soap. Yes, I know there are people out there that I don't know that for some reason they just seem to get off on the whole idea of not having to leave their couch and talking into their phone and saying they want dish soap. Hey, phone, I want dish soap. And then it gets recorded and it goes onto a big server, how many times you buy dish soap and when and all that stuff. But let's think big picture. Let's put this together with all the other pieces we keep talking about and we know about, and we know it's impending. And it spells doom if we let it happen. And that's social credit score and the use of centralized banking, digital currency, etc. So if I'm right, and I really firmly believe that I am, and that Amazon is not actually a company, that Amazon is a diktat. It's a communist control environment that controls who can get what, when, how often, what it costs, everything. So let's play this out like a chess match. If Amazon is allowed to continue to control all the things they control and continue to push further into, I think, did I mention pharmacy? They want to develop a pharmacy to be able to ship you direct your pharmaceutical medications. And if they control all of that stuff, publishing, they can control what you read, when you read it, your cloud computing, which platforms you're allowed to access, everything. So put all this together. What are those big five doing? The big five tech companies. They are absorbing and soaking up control over everything that we rely on as a society. And we already know it's not hyperbole on my part, and it's not hypothetical. The intention is to create global centralized banking digital currency that is connected to a social credit score system. We're already seeing it with corporations. They have the corporate equity index that is forcing corporations to do terrible things. So avoid Amazon. Check it out. There are alternatives. I've been purchasing books. I've been buying books consistently over the last couple of years, and I've found alternatives. They do still exist. Just go a little further down the list. If you're doing a Google search, guess what's going to show up at the top? Amazon Publishing. Don't use Google. Switch to Brave. When you go on Brave, do a search, and you're going to find, what is it, Goodreads? I've found a whole bunch of them. Give them, even if it's a dollar extra or something. I'm not even comparing price, because our freedom at this point, I think that whole, somebody thinks they can save 83 cents or something. I think that argument we save for another day. Right now, the critical thing is we should be pushing to dismantle this massive tech oligarchy thing. It is spreading too fast, and we should not be embracing it and allowing it to happen. That begins with all of those. If you can avoid them, for instance, recently, Andrew Riddell from Liberation Tech was on the program. Go back and watch that one. They have an alternative to Microsoft Office. There are alternatives out there. Switch now, or I strongly suspect in the future, you won't have a chance. And if you're buying, shop local, spend cash. Don't give 3%-ish of everything that you buy and every transaction you do to MasterCard and Visa. They're bad people. They hate us. They are bad companies that want nothing like what we want, which is freedom, autonomy, independence, and liberty. Thanks for hearing me out. I'm Jonathan Broadbent, and this has been another episode of UnWoke.Academy. By the way, if you are able to become a paid subscriber, we would greatly appreciate that. Part of our business model going forward, in order to be able to fund these research reports and the deep dive analytics that we do into woke companies and finding great alternatives has everything to do with revenue model. My company is being closed. If you can help support us financially, we'd greatly appreciate it. If not, no worries. Everything we do is going to be free, even the stuff that's locked up for a couple of days, just to say thank you to our paid subscribers. That unlocks and becomes free after a few days. Whatever your circumstance, if you can help afford to become a paid subscriber, we would greatly appreciate it.